Welcome to the Legacy Through Land podcast, where we're dedicated to empowering you on your journey to land ownership and management. I'm Tyler Markham, your host, and each week we'll dive deep into the world of land investing, management strategies, and the transformative experiences tied to owning your very own piece of dream dirt. With our expert guests, inspiring stories, and actionable advice, we're committed to helping you become a better land manager, hone your investing skills, and start building your family's legacy through land. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. We hope you'll enjoy.
Welcome back to the Legacy Through Land podcast. Thank you for joining in this week. I always start off with kind of what's going on in my world. So this is definitely probably the one of the most strenuous mental exercises for me because I'm usually running so hard. I don't ever look back at what we've been doing, but it is now middle of July. So we're in the thick of it. I really am just so excited that we are right here on the front doorstep of all the prep it takes to get your hunting farms ready for this fall. So if you're a hunter and you're getting ready for all the hopeful excitement of the fall this year, that usually starts right now for me. I'm spraying food plots, trying to get plots prepped. I cannot stress enough, if you're listening, and we've talked a little bit about deerisms so far on this podcast. We'll spend more time here in the future, but you really are going to be destined for failure if you don't prepare your plots correctly by spraying and getting rid of the weeds and the competition. So depending on what you're going to plant, obviously it could require a different cocktail of spraying, but I just can't recommend enough that right now is what I'm spraying. Killing plots, getting things ready to go for the fall. We've got new cameras getting deployed on properties. We're getting out, minerals and bait for inventorying, and it's just the season is upon us. It's Christmas in July, as most hunters say. So that's what I've been doing. I've been out in Illinois as well and working on, I've got a couple leases there and just been working on this property I'm working on buying. So it's a whirlwind of chaos back from the land of Lincoln back here in Ohio. So this week's, I'm going to jump right into our episode. I cannot wait for you guys to get to hear from Wes Delks. Wes is a wildlife consultant with Don Higgins and Higgins Outdoors. I actually had Wes come on my farm twice in two different time frames there in Jackson, Ohio. And yes, the farm that we just listed for sale. I had Wes come there twice. We first bought about 280 acres, and then we were able to buy another 190, so another 200 acres, and I had him come back and build the plan towards what we would do to tie all that property together. And he has just been a really, really good tool for me to have in my arsenal. And I tell you what, if you don't know much about wildlife consultants, you're really going to have your eyes open today to the fact that there are people who can bring their knowledge and expertise to your property and show you how to make your property better, how to set it up for optimal hunting experiences, set it up for optimal habitat for the deer and the wildlife of your property. And that's what Wes is. He is just really uniquely gifted. He's got a background from all the way from college into becoming almost an intern with Don Higgins and just staying in Don's pocket. They have a great, great history together, been together over 13 years now, personally, professionally, in all their endeavors with their families and how they're tied together. So this is a great, great episode. Let's jump right into it. You're going to like this one. Let's go.
All right. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. Wes, you cannot say it any better that he lives in God's country than to say we're really hoping that Elon Musk will sponsor this podcast and give us free Starlink for all the guests that have issues, because Wes would be one of many. So we switched this to a phone call. He has an incredible, beautiful face. Everybody, trust me, that is not AI on the thumbnail if you're on YouTube. He has the jawline of Tim Tebow and the faith of Tim Tebow and the brain of like whoever won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So, great
quite
dude.
The intro,
Dude.
I would say I have the face for radio, but hey, that's okay.
I don't know, man. He is my wallpaper on my phone. My wife always asks why, but it's whatever. It's whatever. So, anyways, real talk, dude. Thank you for coming on here. I cannot wait to talk about dirt and deer with someone who intimately spends time with dirt and deer. Like you've hunted some before, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. I figured you had thought about it or something before.
Yep.
Real talk. You guys are just going to listen in on Wes and I getting to catch up. Wes and I got to know each other just obviously through Whitetails and me being just immersed in the Don Higgins culture and ecosystem and whatever you want to call it. Listening to the Chasing Giants podcast for years and years led me to honestly, dude, what has been a really, really good relationship with getting to meet Wes, and he's been on my farm a couple times. Actually the farm that we just posted for sale, so we could probably even tickle his ear about some of the things he may remember about that farm. But dude, we're just gonna hang for a little while and let these listeners check into what I would literally say is one of the coolest jobs in the outdoor industry there ever was, and he has it. So
Awesome to hear from you, Tyler, and good to catch up.
yeah, man. Likewise. So, Wes, nobody get mad here. Wes is coming to us from the Hoosier State. That Hoosier State. I want to talk to you about because I have what I think is the answer to how you got to Indiana, but we're gonna go back to. I want to set the scene for these listeners. How how do you arrive at what I would argue is one of the coolest jobs in the world? How do you arrive at what you do? If you could give us the backstory to if some of your college time kind of led you to that, or how in the world did you get to where you're at today? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I will try and make this as short a story as possible.
Don't. I
Okay.
want the
Well,
long one.
it really is a longer, drawn out story, but I don't come from a hunting family. My dad was not an outdoorsman. When I was 12 years old, I asked for a trail camera for Christmas. And the very next day, I went out and hung that trail camera on a property from some people that church that owns a small chunk of ground. And then the very next day, I went back out there to check that trail camera, and I had 2 yearling bucks fighting in front of that trail camera. And that just lit a fire for whitetails inside a young boy's heart that has just grown hotter and hotter and hotter.
Dude,
and
that's awesome.
I did not, like I said, I didn't grow up in a hunting family. It started out with I just wanted to see the wildlife. I just wanted to get pictures of the wildlife. And I wasn't buying that first trail camera. I didn't ask for that first trail camera for Christmas because I wanted to kill deer. I asked for that first trail camera for Christmas because I just wanted to get pictures of wildlife. And so, yeah, I got that camera, and that led into an evolution of, then I started trapping. And then I started, it led into deer hunting. When I was 17 years old, there was a guy by the name of Gary Jacobson. Very dear friend of mine. He's since passed away, but he wanted to, he was the president of a large company, local to where I live, and wealthy man. And he wanted to travel the world hunting in retirement. And he ended up having some health problems and a couple knee surgeries. And instead of traveling the world hunting, he decided he wanted to bring the wildlife to himself, and specifically big deer. And so he started a deer farm. And I went down that journey with him, helping him put up fences, bottle feeding fawns, the whole 9 yards. And for payment, at that time, instead of getting paid, I asked Gary, I said, hey, how about you pay me in fawns? And so that allowed me to kind of grow my own little captive herd within his facility. And then I sold those deer, and that kind of helped me pay my way through college, which you mentioned I'm from Indiana. I'm from northern Indiana, not southern Indiana. So that makes me a Boilermaker. And
yeah.
Yep,
Sorry for that.
yeah,
Inadvertent sidearm.
yeah. Crimson and cream is evil colors around here. We bleed black and gold. So Purdue University is. I'm a third generation Boilermaker, and they have a very good wildlife management program, which is what I decided to do. And while I was in wildlife management, I believe it was in 2011, that I started dating a girl who's now my wife. Her name's Madison. And in 2011, my future mother-in-law bought me Don Higgins books for Christmas. And she said, I'm kind of related to this guy. For your Christmas present, would you like to arrange for our two families to meet? I said, absolutely. I would love to meet Don. And he was kind enough to oblige. And we met at a steakhouse in Mattoon. And that was probably 13 years ago now. And he's just the most down-to-earth, humble guy. If you meet him in person, literally the day that I met him, I just felt like I had an instant friend. And the Higgins family has become like family to Madison and I. They're very dear to us. I introduced my best friend to his daughter. They're now married. Just the Higgins family is like family to us. And so since 2011, we've had different business ventures together, have done different things. I was general manager of Real World Wildlife Products and co-owner of it for a while. And that led into some consulting. And while I had previously been doing some consulting on my own, but when I started working for Real World Wildlife Products, I talked to Don and said, hey, why don't we, Don obviously was doing it on a much, much bigger scale than myself. And I talked to him about doing it underneath the umbrella of Higgins Outdoors. And that does, I've been a consultant now for 7 years, and it's just been an awesome opportunity.
That dude, holy cow, I did not know there was that many ties. So let me try to break this back down. You tell me the guy's name again that had the original idea for a deer farm.
Gary Jacobson. He was the president of a company called Indiana Packers, which most farmers in Indiana will recognize. Indiana Packers is a pork producing plant. A lot of hogs in northern Indiana go to Indiana Packers, and he was the president of that company. And although he was very involved in animal sciences and the livestock world, his passion really was wildlife, and he just had a love for deer. And like myself, I really don't consider myself a deer killer as much as a conservationist. And he just had a love for growing things. I mean, he converted a bunch of ag ground into native grasses, and we planted a bunch of trees together and had the deer farm on that same property. So he was just probably my first whitetail mentor before Don on just seeing captive whitetails and being around them all the time. You learn so much that you can't possibly learn just being a hunter. And if somebody's been a hunter for 30, 40 years, they've seen a lot of whitetail behavior. But when you're in a captive pen and you see a buck follow behind you, and you use a walking stick and you throw it into a pile of sticks, and he goes and puts his nose on that stick, or you see fawns experience rain for the first time, or just being around them all the time, you just learn a lot. And as hunters, we always think that deer are extremely tough. Everybody's made a bad shot, and you think they're very tough. As deer farmers, you think they're very the opposite. They seem like every few weeks you have another deer that we had deer that got their head stuck in a twine around a hay bale, and a deer that, man, you didn't even know that deer was sick, and all of a sudden it's dead. And it's just a hard game to play when every single deer that you have, or at least at that time, was thousands of dollars. And just very thankful for that experience of learning from Gary and being around captive whitetails on just what you can learn from the whitetail.
Okay. Holy cow, man. So let's go back to because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is like, what at what age or what time frame in your life did you learn that a whitetail consultant could even be something that existed? Like honestly, Wes, this is going to be a vulnerable conversation for me. I didn't know a whitetail consultant or somebody who could go and almost help you set up an improvement plan for your property. I didn't know that existed until you and I first got together, which couldn't have been more than 4 years ago. I didn't know that existed. So
Yeah.
when did you know that that was even a thing?
Well, honestly, it was just kind of a natural evolution for me of the things that I like to do and where it led. Uh, when I was at Purdue in wildlife management, I thought I wanted to be a wildlands firefighter. And if you've ever looked at the job listings on like the Texas A&M wildlife job board or things like that, you'll see these wildland firefighters where honestly there are a lot of single guys. And before I met Madison, before I had a ring on my finger, I wanted to go out west as soon as I was done with school. And I thought I'd be a hunting guide for a portion of the year. And then for another portion of the year, I'd be a wildland firefighter. And that is definitely a single man's life. I'm
Dude,
doing those
yeah, for
two things.
sure.
But I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, and I've just got a bone in my body for adventure. And that's just two things that were just right up my alley that, man, if I'm doing those two things, you're always going to have an adventure. You're going to have a story to tell. But then when I met Madison, um, realized being a family man needed to go a little bit different direction. And I guess when I met Dawn in 2011 or 2012, whenever that was, I we became very close friends in short order, and he was already doing some consulting. So I would say it was then that I figured out it was a thing.
Okay, okay, and that makes sense. That makes sense that you were able to see someone do it. Obviously, I just wondered if you had said you were doing a little bit on your own and then partnered with him. I didn't know if you had started that completely on your own, just out of your own mindset, or having maybe been asked by people if they could give pointers. But it makes more sense. You had seen Don create that, and then were able to
Right.
obviously emulate it.
Yep. So I'd seen Don create that, and then in having the captive whitetails, going to Purdue in wildlife management, obviously that gave me a little bit of wildlife management expertise, if you will. I hate to even use that word, but
No, dude, but I understand what you mean. Pedigree. I mean, it gives you gives
a
you
little bit
seat
of
time.
credibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I started writing articles for Wildlife Management News and Mossy Oaks Gamekeepers magazine and a few different magazines. And so, yeah, I just had a couple close friends and local people that would just ask me, hey, what would you do with this property?
Yeah.
And I remember some of those very early on consults. It was normally a consult now. I mean, I do it in a day. I meet with the person that morning. I go through a PowerPoint presentation with them. Um, we look at the property in its entirety. I pitch the plan to them, and then they receive a detailed hard copy notebook in the mail within a few weeks. But starting out, I mean, I would take them out to dinner. We'd go to the property, maybe look at it a day, maybe a second day. We'd go back out for dinner and talk about ideas. And I mean, some of those first ones, it was a lot less money for a lot more time. And
Yeah.
but some of those first people are very near and dear friends, and the things that they're doing on their farm are it's very cool to see with times how some of those changes develop as some of those early clients that have been doing things for as many years as they are now.
Dude, I'm experiencing that now. Now that you've been to my farm, the first one I want to say was 4 years ago. Um, Seeing some of the projects I've done that you recommended come to fruition, as far as seeing the maturity of the miscanthus, seeing the maturity and the cleanliness of my switchgrass, and seeing these things finally develop. It just takes some time. It just really does literally take some time. And I think that's one of the things that I just undershot myself or way over. I way under delivered and over expected that the timeline would be quicker than it was. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I can resonate with what you're saying, and that leads to a question of, if you think back to some of those first consults, it sounds like maybe they were friends. Do you know of one, or can you think back to when you maybe had some of those early consults that maybe your first one that wasn't a warm connection, or somewhere where you could they would be the guinea pig for you? Do any of them come to mind when you were kind of, I'm out on my own, I'm spreading my wings, like in my own life when I started doing land, Wes, when I went from house flipping and was really doing land, I can remember walking some pieces and kind of almost like feeling this anxiety of like I'm doing this, like I jumped, like I've jumped off the ledge, like I'm doing this. Someone's, asking me to look at this piece of land. I'm going to be making an offer. It started to well up in me of like, this is what you're doing now. Did you have one of those? Do you ever have that kind of a moment where you felt like, I'm way out here now? I'm on my own wings.
Well, there's kind of a balance between. I mean, I think um, we're all learning. We're all learning
Yeah.
from each other, and we got to be open minded. And to this day, I learn a lot every single year from my clients, and I've learned about loblolly pine rotation in Virginia and what the mesquite bush does in South Texas, and how deer yard up a lot in North Dakota, and what we need to do to provide for the winters in North Dakota. And so I'm constantly learning from my clients. However, I balance that quite honestly with confidence. And Kyle Harmon from Team Radical, I don't know if this is still his tagline on his email, but at the bottom of his emails, he used to have a slogan that says, "Confidence kills." And I really do believe there's a lot of truth to that when it comes to big buck killers. Is if you look at the guys that are consistently killing big bucks, is they normally are very confident in their approach. And I'm not saying that there's only one approach to killing big deer, because that would be very narrow minded. Is there's a lot of guys that are consistently killing big deer, but doing so in very different ways. But the Higgins approach, or the approach that I put together on people's farms, there's a core set of principles that I stick to every single time when I go to people's farms. And even when those early consults, I was very confident that this is going to work. Is, hey, here's a piece of property. What would you do with it? And hey, here's exactly what I would do with it. I am confident that this approach will improve your property. And so,
Yeah.
I'm open-minded, and I'm absolutely learning all the time, but I am confident that our approach will work for people.
Dude, that's
Always
so
have.
good. That's so good. I mean, there's a way more um, motivational speaker-esque quote that I'll butcher, but the guy always said, "Stay humble, but stay hungry." And it's kind of that same, when you have confidence, you can be humble and still go after it. I love that. I love that.
Well, yeah, pride goes before a fall, and it's important to stay humble. And a little humility goes a long, long way. And I want to make sure that, there's that balance and confidence and humility.
So full time now, 7 years. You've been a wildlife consultant as your title, full time. You've been on a lot of journeys. Sounds like, if you could touch on the map, where all have you done consults?
Yeah, I mean, from as far northeast as Maine, as far northwest as North Dakota, southwest into Texas, and then southeast into the Carolinas. So I
Wow.
believe I've been in 26 states for whitetail consulting. The majority of those are, I've done very little in the Northeast or the Southwest. The vast majority of the consults are in the Midwest. But I have put together plans for people in 26 different states now. Yeah.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And I'm sure just the nuances that you, like you said, you're sometimes depending on the clients to tell you more about the nuances of what deer do in their neck of the woods that you can
Well,
apply to what you
yeah,
generally know deer do. That's amazing.
absolutely. Like I mentioned, that guy in Virginia. I've got several clients in Virginia, but one in particular comes to mind. Um, he has 3,000 acres, and his farm is a loblolly pine plantation. And every single year, they clear cut 100 acres. And
Okay.
when I say clear cut,
Blitz
I
it like
mean
forestry mulch.
right. Like clear cut means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, particularly in the
Uh-huh.
Midwest. But when you say clear cut in Loblolly Pine Plantation in Virginia, I mean there is not a tree out there because they go through and it's a pulp market. I mean, it's
Yep.
all
They
gets
mulch it.
yeah. And so when you're taking 3,000 acres and every single year you are taking out every single tree on a different 100 acres, you are constantly over time changing where the bedding is at. And so
Yep.
that is a very unique situation compared to your average client in the Midwest where, hey, we're establishing this TSI thicket or we're establishing this switchgrass. And here is where the bedding is from now on. And so that, yeah, you get definitely go into different geographic areas and run it into some unique situations where you have to work with the client as to, hey, this approach will work for you, but we also need to work together because I don't completely understand how this specific species in this specific region is gonna. It's just you've got to work together on some of those
Yeah.
nuances. Absolutely.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So I want to give you guys somewhat of an inside look at what I've known about Wes and just the friendship we've developed. We don't talk as much as we should after this podcast. We're going to fix that for sure. He asked me some interesting questions before we started recording that I find just really helpful because it's always just you don't know what you don't know about somebody or what they do unless you continue to stay in communication. And so we're going to catch up together throughout this, and you guys just get to be the inside listener. But dude, tell me this. This is what I'm so interested in knowing is when I first met Wes, I think you had just closed on. I want to say just closed on your new dream farm, and I think you called us the Higgins 2.0 farm.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be on this farm. Um, it's over 200 acres, which is significantly larger um, than I would have ever believed I would have had the chance to buy. And, are you still there, Tyler?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep.
But we closed on this farm in October of 2021, and um,
And
at
Wes,
that time,
if you don't care, this is something I think the viewers have and listeners have really loved and enjoyed, and I know I enjoy. If you don't care to walk us through, how'd you find it? What was that like? Because that to me can be. Think about it this way, Wes. If someone never buys the piece of land, everything we're about to talk about, they never even experience. And so I have
yeah,
just found it's really fulfilling and empowering and all the other cool words to hear the journey. And yours may have been just smooth as silk, but any good deal I've ever done has not been as smooth as silk. Can you walk us through how that went? How'd you find it? Why'd you pick the area? All that.
yeah. Um, so Madison and I moved over to Illinois for a time to help with real world wildlife products. But when we were ready to start a family, um, we wanted to move back closer to grandparents. Her parents and my parents, they live a half mile apart from each other, ironically. And
Nice.
yep, so nice to have free babysitters close by. And
Yep.
um, so in 2021, we moved back to Indiana, and there was this process of looking for a very certain kind of layout. And I'd been around Dawn enough that I was looking for two key things. there was two questions that I was asking myself. And the first question is, how much of the property line is likely to get neighboring hunting pressure? And the second question was, can I access that cover from multiple different directions? And if I could answer those two questions well, then it was a property that I was interested in. But honestly, there's not very many properties that have that, what I refer to as power of isolation. And I think a lot of guys are looking for good quality cover. They're looking for properties where there's already a lot of deer and big bucks. And I, as a somebody that has the rest of my life, and I'm a younger guy, so I have the rest of my life to manage a property, I wasn't really looking for quality cover. And where big deer are at now, I was looking for properties that I could turn into something special. And I referred to it in a video one time as a Higgins 2.0, and it's certainly never going to be that. But I referred to it because it has those two things. It has the good separation from neighboring pressure, and I can access it through open ag fields and cattle pasture. And when we bought it, I had been looking for that kind of layout. And I had a list in a radius from where our parents are at in a specific school district of properties that had that kind of layout. And there was about, probably 25 to 30 on that list. And I realized that if I was looking for a specific kind of layout that had that isolation, I just was not going to be able to wait for something to pop up on the real estate market. And I could be, if I was looking for that kind of layout in a small area, I was going to have to go find it. And I just was Onyx searching and Google mapping and looking at aerials, identifying these properties until I had about 25 or 30 identified. And then from Illinois, I would come back to Indiana and on weekends and knock on doors of this list of people, and got a lot of no's and probably got down into the 20s before I found someone that said, we would be interested in that. And
I got to stop you a second.
Yep.
How many bombs you're dropping? Let me make sure we're covering all these. You said you knew you wanted to find something where you could build what you knew would hold big deer eventually. You weren't so worried about where big deer were that day.
Yeah.
Man, I cannot tell you how many times, Wes, people live and die by whatever the trail camera pictures were on a farm the previous fall, whether they died or not. Live and die by that.
And if they're wanting to show up in year one and kill big deer, then I absolutely understand that approach 100%. Or if they're wanting to flip it, buy it and kill a big buck or two and then flip it, completely understand that. 100%, I would be doing the same thing. But when I bought this farm, I was 28, I think, or 29. And so I got a lot of years on reaping the benefits of investing into a property that lays out well, but might not necessarily that first fall.
Don't even say it yet. You're going to kill my punchline. You're not allowed to say your first years of runway here. We're going to leave people on the edge of their seat. It's later that we're going to talk about that. I know enough to know where he's going. I want to break another thing down. I want to make sure people are hearing this clearly. So, Wes, you build this criteria in your head and you say, these are the things that I want. Don't care if there's big deer there now, but I want something that is a canvas that I know I can build something on, and it has to have the power of isolation.
Yep.
And then it has to have great access. I want you to just explain really quickly what the power of isolation is. What does it mean to you? What are you looking for when someone says, hey, that sounds really cool, but I have no idea how to identify that? What is it?
Well, I guess probably the best way to identify it is to first talk about what the opposite is. And so the opposite of isolation is if you have an 80-acre chunk of timber that's surrounded by more timber. And honestly, in Southern Ohio, there's a lot of pieces like that.
Hey.
Yeah. Not to be picking on you, but
Hey, get out of here.
yeah, that's a piece where if you're turning that 80 acres into a big buck mecca, every single neighbor has the opportunity to get as close to your property line as possible.
Yep.
And I look for properties, when I say isolation, is that have physical separation between your sanctuary and neighboring hunting pressure. And that might be roads, it might be lakes, it might be rivers, it might be neighborhoods, it might be golf courses, cemeteries. But a lot of times it's in ag country, wide open ag fields and livestock pastures. And you can artificially create isolation with something like I have. I've put in a 17-acre cattle pasture to help create some isolation on a certain border. But when I say the power of isolation, I'm looking for properties where, due to the layout, that neighboring hunters can't sit along my borders, so I can distinguish my sanctuary in a buck's mind from the rest of the world. Because if your 80 acres, if your sanctuary is 100% connected by other neighboring timber, is very, very difficult for a buck to recognize that 80 acres as something special.
Yep.
But if your 80 acres has a river on one side, and let's say it has two sides of road access, and then the fourth side is a cattle pasture, that's 100% isolation, where if we develop that 80 acres, we can really get a buck to relate to that sanctuary as unique from the rest of the world.
Yep.
Hopefully
all right. So, and I think too, like for just the most elementary visual version of this, Wes, would you agree that if you're just on Google Maps and you see tillable acreage, thousands of acres of tillable acreage, and then a 200-acre farm that's all big woods, that can be what you're talking about in its simplest form?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Because
that's
it is, yeah, it's just different. It's just literally different than everything around it. So that could be in its simplest form. The way you're okay. So second
now,
thing,
with that being said, I'm definitely not looking for. I mean, to me, the open ground, the tillable ground, that's your playground. And so, if you got
get both,
yeah, exactly. Is if you've got some tillable ground. I mean, it's pretty tough if it's a 200-acre chunk of timber. It's tough to add a 15 to 20-acre patch of switchgrass, right? It's tough to add 20 acres of food. But when you've got a parcel that has some tillable and some maybe early successional areas and some hardwood timber in that mixture, then you've got more playground, if you will. So it's nice to have isolation, but I want that isolation to have a mixture of some open ground where we can do some create some diversity of cover and some food as well.
Okay. So we're gonna leave that there. I want to cover something else before I forget it with my ADD brain here that you have said that's powerful. There's just always this trending theme with anyone I talk with on the podcast, and it's that we do really hard stuff. Like it's worth doing really hard stuff to get the outcome that you're looking for. It's worth doing hard stuff. So what I heard you say, make sure I heard you clearly. You picked your criteria, knew exactly what you were looking for, and then you just sat back and waited on realtor.com or land.com to give you a listing.
No. No.
So I get that call all the time. I've been looking for 3 years. Like, really?
Right.
Have you really been looking, or are you just thinking that low hanging fruit will just magically send a letter to your house and say it wants to buy? So you went door knocking. Okay, let's just make sure people are hearing. He didn't go door knocking, and maybe he did. Start with permission. Could I get permission to hunt the farm? Could I get permission to check your mail for you? You straight went and said, "Would you buy? Would you sell it?"
Yeah. When I went door knocking, if I would have walked up there and said, "Hey, can I get permission to hunt your farm, I mean, that's going to be, I mean, where I live at,
Strike one.
I mean, yeah, it's no. The answer is no. I mean, the vast majority of farms is no. So, I mean, I was leading with, I mean, I wasn't asking to hunt.
Yeah,
I
let's
wasn't
hear your
asking to
door
put up
knock
trail
pitch.
cameras.
Bring us in.
I can't do that. I can't give you my door knock pitch.
No,
But
pitch is the wrong word, but I guess you knew going into this, you know, picture you're in someone's driveway, you know the conversation you're going to have, and I'm assuming, Wes, if it's safe enough to ask you, are you telling them, hey, my wife and I are from this general area, we're looking for a farm to buy to build our forever home and raise our kids here, and you know, are you interested? Is it something like that?
yes, and quite frankly, I was very selective at the words that I was using, and in that pitch, I never used the word hunting.
Okay.
I was telling landowners, and this is honest and from the heart, is I'm looking for a property. I'm a conservationist, and that I can invest my passion of wildlife management into developing a property with native grasses, tree plantings, food for the wildlife, and we'd like to raise some calves and have a family on it. So I was knocking on doors. I never used the word hunting, but I was always asking, can we buy your ground? And so that was, and a lot of times it was instantly no. And then eventually found somebody that was interested. So.
And you jumped there, then you found someone who's interested. Tell me what that felt like. I mean, because this is vivid for me right now. I'm living this right now. What did it feel like when you got that interest? What went through you?
Well, actually, I had been doing all that door knocking and meeting with folks, but there was one particular property that was significantly bigger than any of the properties that I had been door knocking on. And the tax address was a different state. It was Kansas, and there had a Kansas tax address. So I wasn't going to drive to Kansas to talk with this person. But I Googled that name, and I found the lady's name on Google, found out that she was a school teacher, and I called the school. And the school she told me that she was retired, and I asked for her phone number, and sure enough, they gave it to me. So the school gave me this lady's phone number, and I called the lady, and so this was actually the one and only one I didn't talk to in person. And I called her, had a conversation with her, and she thought that I talked with her for a long time, but she kept asking multiple times, are you a realtor? No, I'm not a realtor. I'm not wanting to flip your ground, blah, blah, blah. And she said, if you're really serious about this, she was an older lady. She said, write me a letter. I said, done. I will do it right now. And so I wrote her a letter, put a picture in there of our family, sent it to her. And a few days after I sent that letter, she called me back up. And she had another sister from Florida that they co-owned the property together. And she had to talk with her sister. And things kind of fell into place by the grace of God. And you know how it is when, land is such a special thing. And just got the butterflies in my stomach that, hey, this might be a real opportunity. And walked to the farm for the first time and with Madison. And like I said, it didn't have the quality cover. It didn't have the big deer here. But I was looking at it from the potential of what it could become years down the road. And just very thankful that it all worked out.
So you were able to make a purchase offer. It worked out. You got it closed.
Yep.
At that time, you guys were living in Illinois still, or had you already moved home, or what did that look like?
Yep. We were living in Illinois, and I'm trying to remember the specifics.
Yeah,
There was
well,
one
number one,
consulting.
congratulations, dude. If you don't hear it enough, I mean,
Thank you.
listen to this.
Yeah,
I mean, you fast tracked an incredible life changing journey. So congratulations on doing hard work. This is so funny, Wes, because any great story, any great path that I get the chance to interview and hear about, any great success path has these exact types of turns in the road. How many people do you think listening right now, how many of you would have stopped at, well, I had to Google her and saw that she works at a school? How many would have just stopped there? Oh, the number's bad. I don't know. I guess it's just not meant to be. How many would have
right.
stopped there? And you didn't. And dude, like, I just can't say how much this fires me up that people need to hear this. Like, look what you did. The stuff people are looking for and the journey and the success path people are looking for, they just think it's going to come to them on a silver plate. And you built it. You had to go build it. Like you literally had to manufacture a way to get this to go forward.
Well, it certainly
So
wasn't anything of my own doing. It was God opening doors and the blessings that Dawn has given me. But then sometimes a door was cracked open and I busted it down. So it was
yeah,
I'm
that's the
trying to remember the
manufacturing part.
timeline on the specifics of how it all worked out, but there was a winter there where we were transitioning from Illinois to Indiana. We had
And back
bought the
up real
farm.
quick. Did it have a house with it when you bought this farm? I guess we should dive deeper. You said it had 200 acres, but did it already have a house that you bought too?
It had a home on it that was built in the 80s. It's a rock home, but like a lot of homes in the 80s, it was very divided. I mean,
Yeah,
you know how a
chopped
lot
up.
of exactly. So Madison wanted to come in and open it up, and so we were working at that, opening up
But you
doing
flipped
some
the house.
remodels.
You didn't build a new one.
No, we live in it. We live in
Okay,
it.
all
We
right, got you.
remodeled the house. Yep, remodeled the house, and so while we bought the farm, but we were still living in Illinois, we sold our house in Illinois, and Don and his wife, Robin, they had built the house. And so they moved out of their old house, and we moved into Don and Robin's old house that's on their property. So there was a winter there where we were living in Don and Robin's house for a few months while there was some remodeling going on in our home in Indiana. There's always, for the listener, I mean, there's always chapters and seasons of life where you're going to have a hard chapter or a tough season. And some
Come on,
seasons are
come on.
just exactly. You just keep grinding through, put your head down, and eventually there's light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully.
Dude, so much resonate. I mean, Wes and I met. Wes, I don't even know how much you know about the last 2.5 years of my life, but yeah, I've been through that season for sure. Some of the darkest times of my last family life, the last season with our family making moves, some of the darkest days in the last 2.5 years, all the while trying to create a successful company that listeners would say, "Oh my goodness, it's just been a walk of gold, and this, just you have a dream opportunity." The things you
Right.
probably hear, Wes. Oh my goodness, I just
Yep.
wish that I could have something fall in my lap like that.
Yep.
Well, get
Were
the
you
letters from
willing to
your
do
kids.
X, Y, and Z? Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Get the letters from your kids under your doorstep at night or under your bed, your bedroom door that say they miss their old friends and that they wish we could move
Mm.
home. And get
Mm.
the times when you don't think you fit in, and get the times when you just feel like, what in the world am I doing? Yeah,
Yeah.
go through all that and then talk to me.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real challenges, no doubt. Yeah.
For sure. Man,
Yeah.
this is so good. So you renovated the house, lived in Don's house, the Don 1.0 house, then, and then it sounds like obviously you got your renovations done enough that you guys were able to move in at some point.
Right. Yeah. We didn't buy their old house. They moved out of it and needed to be close to the real world office, and our house was getting renovations, and so we lived there for a few months as a little bit of a transition time in between. But eventually, after consulting season, our house had enough remodels. When we came back, we were still on plywood floors and stuff, but we made it work, and it's we love where we live, no doubt. So very thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Well, let's stay on this. I've kept them on the edge of their seat. Let's talk about it's one thing to look at a property and say, hey, there's not big deer on it now, but I think it's got the canvas that I'm looking for to build, the architecture for wildlife and for these optimal hunting locations and for this farm to hold and house everything I need. Um, I hear people say that all the time, but let's dive deeper. What did that look like for you, Wes? And I'll finally let you let some of the cat out of the bag of how disciplined you have been on that property. I want to dive into when was the first time you actually hunted it. So go into closing, and we all knew anybody who was close enough to Wes's story could know he's made some statements as being a new landowner that I don't know if that many would make. And do you care to dive into that? And have you made good on your own promises? I know
Yeah.
these answers, but I'm wanting other people to hear.
Sure. Yep. So I think a big difference in between what a lot of people do with land and maybe what we do, or what I've done with this property, is I think a lot of people buy a chunk of ground and then they identify where they're going to put their stands and blinds based on the sign. And our approach is to select the most conservative locations based on access and wind, and then to manipulate the deer traffic past those locations. So there's 9 different locations on my farm that, based on access and wind, I identified as locations that I want to develop into great stand locations. And you'll hear Don talking about turning good stand locations into great stand locations. Some of these 9 locations, I wouldn't even have described them as good, because they were below average locations. But they were 9 locations that, based on access and wind, that I felt I could develop into the 9 best locations on the farm. And so going into when we closed in October of 2021, I put up some trail cameras, but I completely stayed out of the cover that entire year and just ran cameras to see what was on the farm. And that year I got pictures, or I got one particular buck that I thought was 4 years old went through the property on 3 separate occasions. But
And what year would this be, Wes? Let's build a timeline here. You closed
that
in
was 20 October of 2021.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
owned it, and the statement that we heard a few times. You said you wouldn't hunt this property for a number of years.
Right. I said I wasn't going to hunt it until there was a buck that met my goal. And that goal was to kill a mature buck. And my standard of mature was 5+.
Yep.
I wanted to kill a mature buck on property that I owned with a bow. And a deer that was 5+ old did not exist that first year. So yeah, it was definitely, I'm not going to hunt the property that year. Between 2021 and 2022, we had the property logged. We added 17 acres of switchgrass, about 10 acres of tree plantings, about 12 acres of food. Just did a whole laundry list of projects to improve the property.
That would have been 22, starting in the spring of 22. The Don Higgins 2.0 farm it starts to run its course.
Right. So I think the logging, I think the logging started like in February, probably ended sometime in June of 2022. And so that spring of 2022, I devoted as much time as humanly possible to give the property a huge facelift in a short amount of time.
I got a deeper question, just because I'm just so vicariously living through your lens right now, Wes, and I know other listeners will be as well. You said you logged the farm first. I got a question that I think will be empowering for me and for listeners. Did this logging help support some of the costs for all your other projects?
Yeah, absolutely. With all logging projects, I always suggest people to get multiple quotes and not just ask for a price, but also the number of trees and by species. And I want to harvest the trees, not just a select cut. I don't want to just high grade the property. I don't want somebody to go through and take the walnut and white oak, but I want them to take all the trees of a certain, whether it's 16 inches, 18 inches, whatever your cut is and higher. But I want them to take the hackberry
Yep.
and the soft maple and the cottonwood and the
shagbark
sycamore.
hickory.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had 3 different quotes. The first one was for 20,000. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think the first one was for 20,000. The second quote was for 40,000, and the third quote was for 60,000. So just getting 3 different quotes obviously made a huge difference.
Well, and I'm going to ask a dumb, sound like an obvious question or an obvious answer, but which one did you go with?
I went with a $60,000 one, but I went to him and showed him the number of by species that one of the other guys was going to do, and I said, I want you for $60,000, but you need to take more trees. I want to be more aggressive with some of those palletwood species. And so he said, yeah, I'm willing to do that. He said, I'm not going to make any money on it, but I'll do that to get the bid. So
Okay.
yeah, I had to go back to him and basically request that he take more trees out, but I wanted to go with the one with more money. And he was, and he's actually logged a second property for me now. So, I mean, he's been good to work with.
So is this a client's property he's logging or a new one you just bought?
I bought a second property here recently. Yep.
Adjacent to yours or just somewhere else?
No, it's somewhere else actually. So
okay. Well, dude,
yeah.
we have more we would have to talk through. I don't know how long I can hold Wes hostage, everybody, but the pistol has left the holster again. I love it. I love it. Is it not addicting? Once you've done it once, you're like, how can I do this again? I don't care if it's 10 acres. I want to do this again.
I'm just not the kind of guy to invest in the stock market or to.
Amen.
Just land is my thing, and my wife drives a vehicle with 300,000 miles on it, and I drive a Beetle pickup truck. But hey, man, if we have some extra money, we can invest in the land. We do. So
I love it.
What we do. Yeah.
I love it. So, all right. So I wanted to make sure and ask that question because, sometimes you pick a logging bid that's actually better for your plan because they may, do those food plots, or they may spend more time cleaning the roads than what normally they would do. Or, they may add culverts where they normally wouldn't. Just little things that I wanted to make sure you weren't looking at, hey, the $40,000 guy was willing to do this, and that, and you were able to weigh the options to say, hey, I'm going to go with this quote because of what it gives me versus the highest money. It may not give you the best outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I worked very closely with that logger. I told him I wanted the path of least resistance for the deer in certain places, and I wanted to actually build brush blockades or limit deer traffic in other places in the timber. And my logger did that for me. And if you're trying to do that with a skid steer and a grapple in the woods, that's a lot tougher than if you got those loggers in there that have the bigger equipment with more horsepower. If you can get them to work with you, man, that is going to save you a lot of time and money. So,
well, I'll tell you, Wes, just camping out on that for a second. Wes he recommended I do that on my own farm there in Jackson. And this is the farm that's for sale. So I'm happy to peel back layers here that process and all of the improvements he asked me to do, that was probably the most overwhelming, uncharted territory journey to go out and have the farm logged because I didn't have any experience with loggers. I didn't know the world, the culture, kind of what to expect. And Wes, you'll just love this, but when I asked them, like, look, these treetops, like, I don't want you to just leave them anywhere. Okay. Like I want, here's the plan. I printed out your plan. Here's this long gas line. I want to create like a 200-yard blockade. And they were like, oh, we just don't know. I don't think we can move these tops. I mean, I just never done anything like that before. And I was like, well, you're going to today. You're going to today. And I went there like 4 times meeting with them, and they still would cut corners. They'd throw like one treetop. And I was like, do you like, no, like, oh, we're going to have to come back on a weekend and just do this. And I was like, I went to the owner. I was like, dude, I picked you guys because this is what, like, I don't want these tops left everywhere. That's not the point. I don't need this to be logged for the money. We need this to be logged for a plan. And so anyway, it was a lift, man. I'll be honest. It was a lift. If you're listening, viewers, listeners, the logging world is definitely a world of its own. And what I would recommend, if you don't have the option to have, a consultant or somebody like Wes even oversee the plan, which I don't even know if he could, is I would have a timber consultant who is a wildlife dude, like in the middle, uh, managing the cut, managing what you need to have done, and make sure they explicitly understand if you're too intimidated of it yourself, managing how that goes. So anyways, Wes, I digress, but I intimately know what you mean when you said that. I had to relive that in my own deal.
I just think that it is such a huge advantage as a landowner if you live on the property. And I realize there's a lot of people, and yourself included, that have properties that they don't live on. But I mean, if the loggers are out there, or if you've got, it just seems sometimes, and I don't mean this in a degrading way at all, but
I know where you're going.
You almost feel like you're babysitting sometimes.
Dude, you
that's not where the blockade needs to go, or this is where you need to open it up. It's such a huge advantage to be on the property and make sure that it gets done exactly the way that it needs to be done for some of these projects starting out. Because, man, if you live in Florida and you own a property in Kansas and all of that gets done and you show up months later and all the equipment's gone, it's like, well, man, we're going to have to charge you a fortune for them to come back and change something. So
and they usually won't
be on the property.
These loggers finally got fed up with me and just didn't do some of it. So I had to go in and cut with chainsaws and cut open the opening. I just kind of gave up and said, hey, just run the row and I'll go in and cut the openings. It was clear they needed to get going, to the next gig. And so I had to do some of this. So it was definitely a learning game that I wouldn't do again the way I did. The cut wasn't bad. So I don't want anybody, the cut was fine, everything with that, but trying to marry a whitetail improvement plan into the ecosystem, those guys want to rinse and repeat. They don't care about your deer.
Yep, exactly. And so finding a guy finding a guy that's willing to, it's going to take them extra time and money on their part to make those paths of least resistance and brush blockades. Finding it, and even if that means, hey, let's reduce that upfront check at the beginning a little bit, it's worth it.
Yep, 100%. So, all right, so you got it. I got a sidebar here, but you had it logged, then you started all these projects. I just wanted to make sure and catch people up on that when you say you got it logged, to me, oftentimes that's a great way to help fund some of the projects. And that logging is tax-free money as long as you buy the farm and, and establish some of the timber as your basis on the front. That's tax-free money. So whatever money Wes got, and I'm not assuming you did this way, but that money he could use to do other projects. So he could start to fund the runway of these improvements. I just want to empower people as we talk through the cool stuff you did.
Yeah, and that original that timber check was $60,000, and I bought a John Deere 6130. That's a 130 horse tractor, and it was like within $500 of that check. So it basically went to a tractor. Yep,
amazing. Yep, amazing. All right, so let's keep going because I know we could talk for hours and hours and hours. So you start doing a lot of these projects. You flipped the script in 22. You said tree planting. You said established a ton of food, 17 acres of switch, which I've established switch, and I know what that can be like. You had the cut done. Honestly, man, going into the fall of 22, your farm could, to some people, look like a tornado had gone through it.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah, it went from a pretty farm visually to a jungle, and it can become a jungle in pretty short order. I mean, within 2 or 3 years, you can have a thick, nasty, gnarly property. So
Yep.
in 2022, I already knew that I wasn't going to be hunting the farm. The year prior, I had that 4-year-old go through 3 different times, and I thought he might be on the property a little bit, but I knew in 2022 I had a different buck to chase anyways. That I wasn't going to be hunting the farm, and it just needed to become a sanctuary. So really, of all those projects that I mentioned, the biggest thing that I did, Tyler, was I stayed off the property. And the freedom of human intrusion, to me, is the cheapest thing that a landowner can do, but the most impactful thing that you can do.
Well, and I would say, to flavor what you're saying, it is the cheapest thing the owner can do, and it's also the most expensive thing the owner can do.
Yep.
Because you have to have the discipline.
It takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah, to make a monthly payment, and a lot of guys, and we talked about this before we started recording. A lot of guys are in the campus that I can't do that. I bought this farm to go shoot a deer with my daughters or do whatever, and that is great. Like, that is not wrong. That is not wrong. But you, of course, in that situation, didn't have kids yet that would have that kind of, drain on the property where you could have maybe shot a doe or something on a corner and still not intruded on that property. But to think about making a payment, flipping a house, planning your move, this is your home, it's your forever dirt, and you didn't hunt it. That's some discipline.
And so the property, I mean, being a couple hundred acres, there's certainly parts of the farm that I do not consider sanctuary.
Yeah.
And so there's places, I mean, there's open ag fields, there's cattle pasture. There's 8 acres up around our house where there's a walnut grove that my wife and I go on walks and stuff. So that's not to say that we don't use any of the property, but there's a certain area on the property that we've defined as our deer habitat where we just don't go into. And so I was really excited to see how the deer would respond in 2022 to all these changes, but most highest on the list being that freedom of human intrusion. And that 4-year-old, I actually called the buck U-Haul because the first picture that I got of him was the weekend that we closed on the property. It was in October of 2021. And so we got a picture of that deer that weekend. And so the buck from move-in weekend got the name, or was dubbed, U-Haul.
That is amazing.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So U-Haul in 2022, I find this honestly
would have
hard
been
to
5,
believe.
correct? He would have been
would
5
have been 5 in 2022. I got 876 pictures of him that year in 2022.
Holy cow! Now, do you attribute this, like I'm going to assume, to the work he did, or happenstance?
I attribute that to the freedom of human intrusion.
Okay, very good.
Yep, that deer. I mean, I live in an area that it is not a good deer hunting area. I mean, most deer hunters in my area would probably kill a 2-year-old and definitely a 3-year-old deer. It is a high pressure area. And so for a deer to get to his 4th birthday, he's seen a lot of pressure. He's seen a lot of stuff.
He's seen some stuff.
Right. And so in 2021, for him to go through the property 3 times, all 3 of those times he went through the property, it was between midnight and 4 a.m.
Jeez.
And then in 2022, to get 876 pictures of him, and a lot of those pictures, I shouldn't say a lot, but I mean, there was daylight pictures in there too. And so it was just pretty cool to see in 1 year's time, a specific buck change that dramatically.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, maybe you're giving yourself too much credit that it was only the freedom from human intrusion. I'm going to assume that was probably a big part of it. But if you logged and maybe created some, different bedding there, or just places he felt more comfortable because they were a tornado and people weren't getting through there quietly, more food, whatever, it could have been a combination of all of it.
Well, I mean, I want to make a property as different from the neighbors as possible. And I want to do everything I can in my power to make my property different. And there's just a whole laundry list of reasons on why our property is different from everybody else that's in this township.
Yep.
And there's no one else with 17 acres of switchgrass. There's no one else with switchgrass, period. Anywhere else in the township. There's no one else that has 12 acres of standing food for the deer, let alone 2.
Yep.
So there's just a lot of things that make this property different from the neighbors. And it did not take a long time to create that difference in the mind of the deer herd. So that was 2022. 2023, got even more pictures of him, probably over 1,000. I did not count that year. But once again, I had a different buck to chase that was bigger than U-Haul. And then in 2024, this past season, was the year that, regardless of what his rack was going to be, I wanted to target him. And his rack in 2023 as an 8-pointer was 157 inches. And so going into 2024, I'm thinking, hey, this deer is going to be 160 plus. And start getting those first summer pictures of him, and he definitely was not a 160 plus. And
Jeez.
at that point, he was a 7-year-old deer. And despite his rack going downhill, I kind of wanted to just prove to myself that the property was working. And my goal was to kill a mature deer on my property with a bow. And despite his rack going downhill, I mean, a 7-year-old deer, by the vast majority of deer hunters, we're going to say that's mature.
Yes.
So despite his rack going downhill, I felt like, hey, I want to close the chapter with this deer. I want to see my farm and all these projects work. Regardless of his antler size, this is the buck that I'm going to target this year. So going into 24, that's exactly what I did.
And you targeted, and so let's jump back really quick. The 23 deer, was this a deer that was resident on your farm or somewhere else that you were hunting you were just more excited about?
Yeah, in 2023, I had a buck called Born Again, and he was actually a mainframe 8-pointer as well, scored 164 inches, and he was just on a permission piece. And he was a buck that I knew was killable. He had the history of going through that permission piece quite a bit during the rut, and started hunting him on November 2nd. And I hunted him from November 2nd until November 9th, morning and evening. And the evening of November 9th, I caught up to him and put an arrow through him. He was probably 15, 18 yards broadside. And attribute that buck really to the Same Time, Same Place article that Don wrote 10, 12 years ago about a buck using a specific part of his range year after year after year.
I remember this, calling it the homecoming.
Well, there's actually kind of 2 concepts there. There's Same Time, Same Place, which Don wrote about bucks that have this 365-day calendar. Really what it is, it's the pineal gland that measures day length. And if a buck, I'll just use U-Haul, for example, he showed up to my farm on September 27th in 2023. And on September 27th, this past year, I told Madison, hey, today's the day he's showing back up out from his summer range. And he did not. But on September 29th, 2 days later, there he was. And it's just uncanny sometimes how close they are to that 365-day calendar. It's pretty special. And that was the same story of this Born Again buck. The buck that I shot in 2023 is every single November. That's when you get his picture using that little permission woods. And that November was the same story. There it was the first 2 weeks of November, and had 3 different encounters with him, and the ninth was the first time that I had him in bow range.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So, all right, jumping 24 again. Jump to 24. You killed Born Again in 23, right?
Right. Yep.
And tell us real quick, because I know this is a cool story. It was one that I was really impacted by. How did he get that name?
Born Again.
Yep.
He was shot by another hunter and assumed for dead, and just then the next summer, there he was, and I was like, oh, I thought that deer was dead. So. I always like to incorporate my deer hunting into my faith as well. And the name Born Again is obviously has ties to that we're born again in Christ, that we're born again as we're all sinners. And when we ask Jesus into our hearts, that we're born again. And it was a name for a deer, but also had that connection to living a different life for Christ at the same time.
Amen. Amen, dude. I knew there was the connection. So, Wes is somebody that, just like David Miller and some of the other people I've had on the podcast, he is definitely somebody I love to watch and vicariously live through in the fall, because he's always wrapping his faith in the journey of hunting whitetails. And just being in God's creation, he's always tying those two beautifully together, and how God's talking to him and teaching him. And so it's belief building for me, both as a hunter and as a person of faith, to continue to wear my faith every day, and put on that armor. So I appreciate that. So we're going to jump to 24, dude. I got a suspicion here. U-Haul is now 7. You did say he went downhill. I'm like you, dude. Score wouldn't matter. If the deer was 100 inches at 7 years old and he was checking the box on your home farm, like that box checks. So what happens? 24. I'm here. What are we doing?
Yeah, honestly, he was the funnest deer that I've ever chased. And I had bigger deer that I could have chased last year, but I just had so much fun chasing this buck. In this process of 2021, getting 3 pictures of him to what he became in 2024. And I say what he became, I don't mean his rack. What I'm talking about is really his home range. And his home range just shrank and shrank and shrank. And he was using a little bitty block of my property with some TSI that was like 6 acres of TSI, a particular food source, and my switchgrass. And I mean, from the time that he came on the property in 2024, in September 29th, throughout October, literally 95% of that time, I would guess that he was within a 40-acre area and probably smaller than that. And I ended up shooting him on November 13th, but between the time that he came on the farm till the time that I put an arrow in him, I got his picture on average about every other day, and probably more than that. I mean, obviously sometimes you get his picture within 4 hours apart, and some days you might go 48 hours. But I mean, I have never experienced chasing a buck that had such at that point as a 7-year-old deer, as small a range as he did, was extremely comfortable moving in daylight. Filmed them in October 3 or 4 times. Where I wanted to hunt, I really needed an easterly wind to kill him, and we just did not get very many easterly winds in October. And
what kind of a wild consultant, man? He must not know anything if he's trying to hunt a deer on an east wind. Gee whiz.
Yeah. Just the where he was, what part of the farm he was using, that was the wind that he was most killable on. And the 3 easterly winds in October that we got, I think I filmed him all 3 of those easterly winds in that food source in October, but I didn't. It was never within bow range. But then finally, in November, November 13th exactly, I'd been grinding after him pretty hard at that point, morning and evening throughout November. And the evening of November 13th was actually an easterly wind. And my son's name is Ben Boone. And he was a little sick at the time. And he always likes to go on lawnmower rides. And I told my wife, Madison, I said, I'll just take him for a lawnmower ride this evening and go around the Walnut Grove a little bit. And I said, Ben, let's go on a lawnmower ride. And he said, no, and which is, I mean, this 2-year-old, I mean, he never does not want to go on a lawnmower ride. So Madison looked at the windsock in front of the house, and she could see it was an easterly wind. And I've got just a saint for a wife, and she said, it's an east wind. Why don't you go hunt that set for U-Haul? So that's all the encouragement that I needed. And I got to the stand a little bit late, but I've built a berm there at that particular location. And even getting into the stand late, and I can just slip right behind that berm and get into the tree. And there was a 2-year-old chasing a doe literally within 40 yards of the tree as I was climbing up into the tree. But thankfully didn't get busted just due to that berm and the access to get there. And I mean, I had not been in the stand. I mean, it was just minutes. And you all heard the commotion from that younger buck chasing that doe. And I didn't have a whole lot of time to get prepared. I mean, just been in the stand a few minutes, and here U-Haul comes to check out the commotion, and thankful that got a shot on him.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So that's, I'm guessing, all right, so the 23 buck was on a permission farm, but this U-Haul was your first buck on the home farm.
That's correct. Yep.
And that was how many years later? It would have been 3 years later.
Right. Yep. So
3
first buck
years
off the farm.
later.
Yep.
3 years later. I don't know if everyone's hearing this. Well, you've made a payment and lived on a farm for 3 years and didn't shoot a buck. And I'm going to guess, Wes, you had other deer to shoot if you wanted to just shoot a buck on your home farm.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm chasing the biggest bucks I can, and obviously, and just like everyone else is. But the years prior, I had bigger bucks to chase, and wanted to wait for just the property to develop and the time to be right. And when U-Haul was 7, it wasn't his biggest rack, but it just I was praying about it that summer, and just felt like God put on my heart the phrase, don't skip steps. And I just wanted to, and you can relate that to your business. You can relate that to your marriage. You can relate that to your deer hunting, your farm, is don't skip steps. When I was getting those first pictures of U-Haul and wasn't real impressed with what his rack was doing, I was like, I've worked so hard on this farm. I've built this history with this deer. Yeah, he's not a giant, but don't skip steps. Let's finish the story with this deer. And was just like I said, just had a ball. Just had the time of my life chasing this buck that wasn't very big. Seeing it, filming him as many times as I did, anticipating his next move, getting as many trail camera pictures as I did with him. And it just was awesome to chase that buck and have that history with him and see the fruition of our farm in that chase.
It is. That's amazing. That really is amazing. That is awesome. So let's jump to, what's it look like for you this fall there? What are some of the projects that are keeping you busy? I mean, if you follow Wes, anybody, like, you will get tired looking at it. Like, I'm doing all the projects he's doing, but the thing that's different about me and Wes, and I shouldn't say I'm doing all of these, I'm doing the projects of the nature that he is doing. I am too hot and sweaty and bothered to post the cinematic, photographic, just amazing heartthrob pictures that he does. So follow him, and what he's doing, I'm doing, just way madder, and I yell at the sky a lot more. So what's keeping you busy right now, my man?
Yeah, honestly, I've got probably 95% of the projects done on my home farm that I want to. So, I mean, the vast majority of the plan is complete. But if you follow Don, you know that he's had his farm for 40 plus years. And what you got to absolutely love about the guy is 40 plus years later, and every single spring, he's
He's
got a
doing
list of
something.
projects that he wants to improve his farm. You got to love that. I mean,
Yep.
he said a few years ago, I'm going to make my farm twice as good. A farm that he's been working on 40 plus years. And I just absolutely love that about him and anybody that takes whitetails, as seriously as you and I do, I mean, we know that it's not just a passion or a hobby. It really is a lifestyle. And I mean, yearly there's every single month there's something that you can be doing to improve your odds of killing the next big buck.
Yep.
And so, yeah, even though I've got 95% of my projects done around this farm, every single year it's, how can I make that blockade a little bit better? How can I make that creek crossing a little bit better? Where can I plant a few more trees? How can I connect my food a little bit more? So, yeah, have all of those projects that everything just needs to be. I'm not changing, like I talked about earlier, I'm not changing my stand and blind locations every year. Each year I'm just making those stand and blind locations a little bit better and a little bit better.
Yep. I can't resonate enough with it. I mean, some of the projects that you had me do, I'm sure you may remember, like the switchgrass. I had no experience with switchgrass. And after like fall number one, I'm like, there is nothing here. Like, I don't even know what is going on. I did all this. I've sprayed all these chemicals that I can't pronounce. I've done this right. I'm pretty sure the depth was right on the drill. I'm clean. What is going on? And then the next spring, it's like, oh my goodness, there's like this blue looking grass growing out of here. And this is amazing. But it has this other grass in it. Now, what do I do with that? Oh, I missed the boat. Okay. I needed to do this 3 weeks ago. It's like, it's a learning game. And you get to now, like this year, I did nothing with my switchgrass this spring, did nothing. And too busy. I should have sprayed, atrazine or just whatever, simazine, whatever, pre-emergent. Didn't do anything. Didn't even burn it. Didn't even get it burnt. It was like great weather, in January or February to burn. I was busy and didn't get it burnt. Oh, I'll burn it in March. Well, then it rained every day and it warmed up and boom, the grass was green and it was like I couldn't even mow it. Dude, it's a jungle of amazing 6-7 foot tall switchgrass now, and it's year 3. It's like you always said, this stuff just takes time, and I'm now really happy with it and feel like I actually know what I'm doing. It just took that.
Switchgrass and giant miscanthus plantings, the number one reason for failure in those plantings is definitely cool season grasses.
Yep.
And starting off on those plantings, the herbicide that you spray, particularly in year 1, is so important.
Yep.
And 2,4-D will kill your broadleaves. Quinclorac will kill your cool season grasses. And then, like you mentioned, simazine or atrazine is a pre-emergent. And if you mix those 3 chemicals in the same tank and spray your switchgrass or giant miscanthus plantings, might be 1 or even 2 times that first year, you've got to give your warm season grasses a fighting chance against the cool season grasses. Things like foxtail will certainly choke them out if you don't give them a boost or a little help at the beginning.
Well, and it seems like what I have found is that the plant can outpace the competition once it gets mature enough.
Older. Yep. But then after a fire year, after you burn it, then it becomes you make sure you just spray it with those 3 chemicals again after a fire year. Yeah.
Okay. And 2,4-D, just so we're jumping into the chemical boat here for a second. 2,4-D really, doesn't it need to be when the plant is already up? The other 2 are pre-emergent. Or no, quinclorac and 2,4-D those are foliar killers, right?
So 2,4-D kills broadleaves. Broadleaves would be things like giant ragweed that have a bigger leaf.
Yep.
And yes, you want to make sure that your switchgrass is a little bit taller.
Yep.
Taller being like 8 to 10 inches tall.
Yep.
I want to make sure that it's a V4, that it's got at least 4 leaves on that switchgrass plant. If you try and spray the switchgrass field when it's 3 inches tall and it only got 1 or 2 leaves, the 240 can be a little hard on it. So
Okay.
240 will kill your broadleaves, and quinclorac will kill things like foxtail if you can spray that foxtail before the foxtail gets a head on it. So 240, quinclorac, and simazine is what I put in my tank, and make sure I'm spraying when the grass is at least at its 4-leaf stage and the weeds are less than a foot tall. So,
And that is simazine is still going to act as a pre-emergent after those are dead.
right.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So there has been your free chemical cocktail minute with Wes Delks. This has been the chemical cocktail minute brought to you by the scientist himself. No, I'll tell you, you got to know enough about these chemicals to be dangerous. So you'll stare at a field and be really frustrated. And I have gone through that in several different plantings, whether it's corn or beans or food plots or clover or now switch and miscanthus is just learning these cocktails. It really, really does help.
Well, I think you said it best earlier is, I mean, I learned by failure.
Yes.
I can listen to all the podcasts and read all the information on the internet, but until you just start doing stuff and you learn from your own mistakes. I mean, if you plant switchgrass for the first time, maybe you plant 5 acres instead of 15. It's because
Right.
you're going to learn what to do and what not to do. And I mean,
Yep.
the first food plot that I planted could have fit in my kitchen. I mean, and now I've yearly probably plant over 20 acres, not just on my home farm, but on other pieces as well.
Yep.
But I mean, don't try and plant 20 acres in that first food plot. We're seems like we're wannabe farmers, and we just keep learning, and we keep breaking equipment, and we keep cussing at it and kicking at it, and
Yep.
but we just keep trying. And
Fail
every
forward.
single year, you just get a little bit better and a little bit better. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. And then to me, what makes it worth it is seeing some of this stuff. I mean, my miscanthus, my stepdad, he every time we're at the farm, he's like, "Boy, that miscanthus is really looking good." Well, we sure didn't say that in years 1 and 2. We started to say, "What in the world is this stuff?" I mean, this stuff's squaggly looking. This stuff isn't thick. Well, get it to year 3, and it took off. It just took off, and it's just cool. It's cool to see that we can walk into these stands and the deer have no idea that we're coming or going. They obviously don't see past it, so it gives them security cover. It's just cool. It's really cool to see some of this come to fruition. So, question here, what does you said you've got a lot of your improvements done. So, what does this fall look like for you? You got any deer you're excited about, or anything you care to tell us about? You got any hunts planned, or anything so you got other states I see you're in. What's keeping your mind running?
Yeah, I've got a buck on a permission piece in Indiana, and I've got a buck in Kentucky that I'm looking forward to chasing. So hopefully, in Indiana, our season opens October 1st, and I love going out of state in the early season. I've always been a believer that if a buck is on a bed to food pattern, particularly in the month of September, it's a really good time of year to kill a big one on purpose.
Yep.
And there's a lot of guys that kill big bucks in the first 2 weeks of November. But if you want to kill a big one on purpose, really early in the season, I'm talking like first week of September or really late in the season. Like I know in Ohio, you guys are open January and even into February.
Right.
And that's 2 times a year that get overlooked sometimes is if you're willing to brave 90 degrees and mosquitoes, or you're willing to brave 10 degrees and cold fronts in January, 2 good times a year to kill a specific deer on purpose.
Yep.
And I'm hoping this buck in Kentucky will follow the script, and I'll at least get a chance to go after him here this September. So, 1 buck in Indiana and 1 buck in Kentucky that I'm hoping to chase.
That is awesome. Tell me, I don't narrow in to where our listeners steal your buck, but I have a permission farm in Kentucky that I'm looking forward to being able to hunt this fall. Are you generally in central, western, eastern? Where in Kentucky are you? I want to buy you dinner if we're close enough.
Well, we can talk after the podcast because I don't want to say too much.
I just said Eastern, Central, or Western. I mean,
the bluegrass state.
Okay, fine. Well, listeners, I won't tell you either because my place is good too. So
honestly, I've got I dabble in the urban game. I mean, I'm certainly not I wouldn't consider myself an urban hunter, but I've knocked on a lot of doors in Kentucky on smaller properties. And when I say smaller, I mean like less than 20 acres in size, and a lot of times smaller than that. And this buck is on one of those teeny tiny pieces.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm fortunate. The piece that I've got permission is more of a big cattle, pasture, horse area. So kind of a unique perspective. But all right, we're going to jump around here and then I'm going to let him go because he and I could talk for 3 days. So jumping back into the consulting for a second, put your consulting hat on. I'm interested in knowing, and you may have told me this before, but I forget. So what has been, if it comes to mind, what was the wildest consult ever? What comes to mind?
The wildest consult ever.
And you can frame that and whatever it means.
I've got several stories I could take this different directions, but one in particular, and I love this guy. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a great guy. But once again, I don't mean this to embarrass him. But did you ever, as a kid, ever read the Amelia Bedelia books? Did you know what I'm talking about?
Amelia Bedelia?
Yeah, like they're kids' books where she would say things like she would read something about put a bun in the oven, and so she would actually put a bun in the oven, or hit a home run, and so she would actually hit. She took everything extremely literally. Okay. And so this client, he was an avid listener of the Chasing Giants podcast. It still is, and follows Don very closely. And so he was taking some of the comments that Don was saying so literally. For example, Don said something like, add cover at all costs. That cover's king. And this guy, which is a great comment to make, cover is king. I believe that, cover is better than food. We got to hunt if a deer spends the majority of his time on his belly, we want to hunt close to his bedroom. Completely agree. And this guy had taken a field and he'd got a bunch of artificial Christmas trees. And he was putting up artificial Christmas trees to add cover. And Don talks about these ropes for scrapes and stuff. And this guy had so many ropes on his property that a squirrel probably could have swung from one side of the property to the next across these ropes. And just once again, this guy is a friend of mine, and I'm enjoying working with him to improve his property. But just breaking down some of Don's comments to a real world application has been, as you'll put it, a wild adventure.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah,
I've never seen somebody put up artificial Christmas trees for cover.
Well, tell him if these ropes are nice and seasoned, if he could just bag those with latex gloves, he's really onto something. He could sell some of those, to other hunters who haven't seasoned their ropes. Oh, that's hilarious. So is there ever a time, and this one's just consulting world, is there ever been a time where you were on someone's property? And I'm just thinking, we're talking about wild consults. Has there ever been one where you just felt like, this is not a fit, or the person doesn't get this to the degree that I'm taking advantage of them or wasting their time or mine or their money? You know what I mean? Has that ever come up where you just said, hey, this isn't a fit, or this isn't going to work?
One in particular comes to mind. It was about a 99 acre property in West Virginia. Another guy that's become a good friend, and I've consulted on a second property for him since then. And this 99 acre property in West Virginia, the entire 99, first of all, it was one point of access, an easement completely surrounded by more cover, and all 99 acres laid on one hillside.
Okay.
It's all of it timber. And I promise you, across that 99 acres, you could not carve in a half-acre food plot anywhere. I mean, you could maybe get in a quarter-acre food plot here and a quarter-acre food plot there. But when your approach is more acres of food in less places, and the biggest food that you can put in is a quarter acre, that's a challenge.
Yep.
And so it was a property that you could do some things to manipulate the deer traffic as far as hunting the deer that were utilizing it. But as far as manipulating the deer traffic based on access and wind directions for long-term success, I was just really upfront with the client and told him, I said, hey, he told me what he'd bought the property for, and he got a great deal on it. And I was just like, hey, just to be honest with you, I would be looking for something different. And since then, he's bought a different property, and I've helped him. He's bought another property that laid out much better based on access and wind, and much more excited for him on the second property on the ability to get deer to relate to that sanctuary with better huntability and better holdability. So he certainly comes to mind for that question.
Dude, so let me ask, let's dive a little deeper there. Do you see that from, Onyx even before you ever get to the property, or do you make sure that you get to a property no matter what? If, have you ever been fooled where you're looking at something and you may have that opinion when you're on Topo or online, but it's different when you get there? Or did you have to get there to see that there is no options here?
Oh, there's definitely been properties that turned away because I did not feel like I could make a big difference. Is when I take somebody's money, I want to make sure that they're getting the value for what they're paying for.
Yep.
With that being said, I do believe the principles that we put into place for people's properties is I always think that we can help someone maximize the potential of their property, but that potential might not be as high as they think.
Yeah.
And every property has a ceiling. Every property has a ceiling for how high we can raise the bar. And some properties might be very low. Is year after year, we might have a 120-inch buck to chase here. And there's other properties where, hey, man, we're going to have a Boone and Crockett buck to chase on this property year after year. And just looking at the aerial, a lot of times you can have a good idea of how much value you can bring to a property. But until I put boots on the ground, there's been properties that I've thought to myself, man, we can make this way better than I thought. And unfortunately, there's properties like his as well. And I just think, man, this property is a challenge. I mean, it's an uphill climb. I just don't think there's too much we can do to make this property get better. So, yeah, I can tell from the aerial a lot of times. There's definitely situations where I'm just got to tell the client in a phone call that, hey, based on your layout, I don't think that I can bring the value that I'm charging for this particular property. But there's other properties where that surprised me, where I get to them and put boots on the ground and think, man, this is way better than I thought. So those are fun.
Yep. I was actually on one of those. I've got a lease in Illinois, and we almost didn't even drive to it, thinking this is going to be mid, and get there, and it is fantastic. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes it does take just being there to see that. So we've kind of covered this. I got another question to kind of leave our listeners with, to be thinking about themselves. And of course, we'll let people know how they can get a hold of you and what all that looks like. But if you could buy a dream farm today and take us back through those criteria that you were looking for yourself, if you were recommending to someone right now, they said, Wes, I'm really serious about chasing trophy whitetails, managing deer, becoming a better land steward, all of these things that we both geek out in and spend our lives on, what would you say you would tell them they need to go search for? What would be those top criteria?
The two things that I look for is the power of isolation and access. And so to me, I'm looking for properties that have separation from other cover and that I can access from multiple different directions. And there's a lot of guys, like I'll pick on Michigan because a lot of people know that Michigan is not the best deer hunting. Is I would rather have a good laying out property in a bad state than a bad laying out property in a good state. And I think of a client in Southern Michigan. That Southern Michigan is notorious for high pressure and not very many big bucks, but they're consistently chasing giants. And it's because they have that degree of isolation and they can access the cover from every single direction. And bucks can relate to their sanctuary very, very well. So that's what I'm looking for on properties.
Dude, that's such a great statement. I mean, I think about some of the first times that I bought property in Southern Ohio. You know, a lot of people have seen what Southern Ohio can produce for deer. And when I lived in West Virginia, it was a 45-minute drive to some really great hunting. And at the time in 2010, 2011, when we bought our first farm, stuff was really, really affordable. And it still is for the most part. I mean, looking at what nationally, the price of land and what I'm seeing in other parts of the country, I mean, it still is very affordable. So still way cheaper back then. But I look at us being in that area and the first farm we ever bought, it just wasn't great. I mean, the access was terrible. It was bottom access. It was essentially a huge hollow with power lines on each side and just, access from the bottom. And it was steep. And I mean, man, it was a challenge. And it just makes me think so vividly of the statement you just made. It was a bad property in a great state. And
Yeah.
I didn't have great results there. Had some big bucks come through, but they
Yeah.
were not killable. It was impossible to get into that farm without the deer knowing you were there.
I mean, the Department of Natural Resources and the states, the Fish and Wildlife, I mean, they have a huge role in the quality of the herd across the state. And it's amazing how just a few regulation changes can make or break a state's deer herd.
Yep.
But if you look at, I mean, everybody can argue on what states are the best, but I mean, most people are going to say Iowa, Kansas, Ohio, and Illinois are right there in the top. And if you have a Department of Natural Resources or Fish and Wildlife that is helping you, if you look at those four states have one thing in common. They have short gun seasons later in the year. I mean, Kansas, short gun season after the rut. Ohio, shorter gun season after the rut.
Yep.
In Illinois, two very small gun seasons. Iowa, same way, is short gun seasons outside the rut. You're just going to have more big bucks, period. I mean, there's more older age class bucks. And that's absolutely a huge advantage to be in one of those states. But if you are like me and you're tied to a specific area, is maybe your family lives in Southern Michigan or lives in Pennsylvania and you're looking for an area in a specific county. You don't have to buy a farm in Kansas. It's certainly an advantage when the state's helping you out and you're in a better neighborhood and there's more older age class bucks. But if you can find the right laying out farm and I put 3 years into mine before I killed a deer off it. If you can put a little bit of time into it, the results will happen. They will pay off.
Amen, man. Amen. I can totally resonate with that. I really can. I've been born and raised in West Virginia, and I do not regard West Virginia as a big buck state. Apart from, and everyone hearing that, just going to get super mad. I'm just saying in the national picture, okay? I'm not saying you can't kill big bucks in West Virginia. I'm saying statistically in the national picture, it's not one that everyone's waiting to see what comes out of there, other than the bottom four counties. But the point is, I can think of some properties in my childhood that, like my grandpa's farm that I was raised on, could have been the most whitetail mecca set up property there ever was. Amazing property, but it was a cattle farm. and he hated deer. And, he
Yep.
always said the sorry deers could tear up a lead anvil. So he didn't want, they're tearing the fence up. And, he was a cattle farmer. They generally usually hate deer. So I never was allowed to do much of he called them food lots, the sorry food lots. Well, his property could have been amazing, but it wasn't great because it wasn't, the regulations were different and there was a ton of hunting, but that farm could have laid out awesome. And I think how good that farm could have been had I been able to develop it like you're talking about. So anyways, I digress, but that makes me think of how relatable that is to what you're saying. I got one last question other than how people get a hold of you. We'll save that for the end. There's something that's happened in your life since we first met, and I just wanted to know how it's been for you. You have become a dad since we first met. Have you
Yep.
decided to stay being a dad, or how do you decide to keep your little boy, or how's that going?
Yeah, I've actually got two now.
Huh?
Yep, I've got two. I've got Ben Boone and William Crockett. So
Let's.
whenever, if I don't got a big deer to chase, I've always got a Boone and Crockett at home.
Oh my gosh, he's got Walker and Texas Ranger, but in the hunting world. I love this.
Yeah,
That is
I got Ben
amazing.
Boone and William Crockett.
How old are they?
1 and 2. Yep.
Okay.
So your little boys. Yep.
That's amazing. So now it's the question that is, the overarching theme of this podcast, while you're living in these stages of your life, Wes, it's always the theme for me of how do you feel or what do you think of when I say creating a legacy through land? It's that's what you're actively doing now from what you're doing. And so how has it been now with being a dad and creating all these things and these deer plodisms and managing your own land, all these crazy moves you've made that they're too young to really know about yet? How has that reshaped how you think since you became a dad?
Yeah, I try to listen to and take the advice of people older and wiser than me. And Don has said several times about just the time with his daughter. Don's got 2 daughters, and when they were growing up, you never get a second chance to spend more time with kids.
Yep.
And if I look at the life of Jesus, I think that one of the many words that comes to mind when I look at Jesus is the word unhurried. And I want to take time to just spend that time with your kids that you never are going to get that chance back, and being an unhurried person. And that comes to my kids, to my wife, clients. I want to be an unhurried person. And that honestly is a struggle for me. That's something that I fight. I'm a very productive person. For many years, it was go, 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 and get as much done as humanly possible, work until midnight, get up at 5 a.m., do it all again. And
yeah, you're talking to somebody who struggles with this as well. So
right. So just with the blessing of this land, there's always going to be debt. There's going to be things that you need to do financially, but just taking time to be very present with your family and with your children, with my wife Madison and my kids Ben and Will, is just being unhurried with them and making those memories of catching crawdads in the creek and digging holes behind the chicken coop, and just doing small things that make their day.
yeah, and I'm sure that this will resonate with you. I've when in my younger years, in my early 20s, and just being a diehard hunter and just only having to focus on me and Molly and just our life, I climbed a lot of trees, a lot, less safe. I did a lot of things, a lot more risky. I did a lot of things I just wasn't thinking. And I literally now, literally, like, I left the farmhouse the other day. I was mowing some clover and I left the farmhouse. I didn't get 100 yards away and I realized I had left my phone at the house. Well, like, part of me is like, whatever, not a big deal. But the other part is, like, I have responsibilities and I have accountabilities, and I have to make sure that if my family needs me, that I am a call away, and I don't know, man, it's just, you start to think just with you use a broader lens to analyze every decision you make. And I will say, for those listening here, I'm sure you'll agree, it's really hard to have kids. It's really, you're in the hardest, I will argue, the hardest stage of our entire lives is right now raising young kids. I will argue that till I'm dead. It's the hardest stage of your life. But it has been the biggest life enhancement for me that I can't explain. Anytime someone said, when you have a kid, like, here's what to expect, this, and this, like, it just went in one ear and out the other. I was falling on deaf ears. When you hold your own first kid, when you hold your kid, it all starts to click. And as they age, it starts to click. And what you've created, that is really powerful, and it's a word that we've grown up around and we've used loosely our whole lives, is family. But you have created a family that is you and Madison's family. It's part of a bigger family. You have in-laws and you have cousins and your parents and their parents, but you have created a family, and that is something that I just feel this immense responsibility to, that that it keeps me grounded, like that it keeps me being level-headed in analyzing every decision. How does this affect my family, not just me, or the bank or whatever used to be the lens. It's now wider. And it's cool. I don't know, man. It's cool. So been fun watching you become a dad.
Their children are certainly a blessing, and you find out pretty quick in life that they don't always do what you say, but they do what you do. And I've been convicted of that even in my attitude. Like, the 2-year-old, he can be a little whiny sometimes, and hey, the joy of the Lord is our strength. And you didn't know you were going to get parenting advice on this podcast, did you?
Oh, I am getting it.
But no, just learn. I'm learning and enjoying being a dad and doing the best I can. So it's been great.
Well, keep at it, because they only know what you tell them. The lens that they get is so beautiful and it's so biblical that we just have that childlike faith, and it's just so pure to watch that through your kids, and that's how God asks us to be. It's just awesome. So, if you guys have listened long enough, you could obviously tell Wes is really probably one of the most unique people in the outdoor world when it comes to wildlife consulting and just using someone who can help you get it right on your farm the first time, which I would immensely argue to anyone listening will cost you way less time and money than getting it wrong. Like, he and I've talked about failing forward, but I can promise you, I wouldn't be anywhere along the journey had I not connected with Wes to get consulting plans done on my home farm to really see the possibilities. I didn't know what switchgrass was. I didn't know what miscanthus was. I didn't know about the idea of using fence corners for stands and the idea of having cattle on your farm. Like he said, he suggested it on my own farm for low deer likelihood areas. Like, I didn't understand these ideas. So sure, you could spend 30 years failing through that yourself and watching it, from YouTube's, or you could get a hold of Wes and he could show you, here's a roadmap on how to make your farm the best it can be. And it will help you spend the right money and the right time the first time in the right places. And I cannot echo that enough. It is easy to waste a lot of money and time on a property. It's so easy to do with the availability of information today. It's so easy to make it wrong. So easy. And it takes a lot of time to fix it. So anyways, Wes, if people say, you know what, the guy seems like he's thought about a deer before and how to make their life a little bit better, how do they get a hold of you, my man?
Yeah, the best thing to do is just send me an email. My email is my first name, Wes, at realworldwildlifeproducts.com. And the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is send me an aerial of your property. And if you've got some questions that aren't property related, you're more than welcome to reach out and send me an email. But if you're interested in consulting services, that email or that aerial is what I'm going to look for. And then I typically respond with a 12-question survey that we have. So, shoot me an email and would love to talk with anyone about their consulting needs.
Love it, dude. I really, really appreciate this. Let's stay connected through the fall to just see kind of how, I want to vicariously live through your adventures and hopefully you with mine as well. But I appreciate you, dude, being on here. And for those who have listened, thank you for checking out this week's episode of the Legacy Through Land podcast. Get after it. You better be out there spraying and getting your plots ready and getting stuff going, because if you are a hunter, it is happening. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you're finding value in this content, we'd love to hear from you. It'd mean a lot if you could share with us how this podcast is helping you on your journey and let us know of any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Be sure to connect with us on all social platforms at Legacy Acres Land Co. and subscribe to stay updated on when new episodes drop. We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Legacy Through Land podcast, and we'll see you next week.